Waitress returns the billionaire's phone, accidentally opens a video meant to destroy his entire empire. What if a single phone call could change everything you thought you knew about kindness? Claire wiped down the last table at Rose's diner, her tired eyes catching the soft glow of something tucked between the worn vinyl cushions. A sleek black phone, still warm from someone's pocket. She'd been on her feet for 12 hours straight, her tips barely enough to cover this month's rent. But something about finding that phone made her pause. Maybe it was the photo on the lock screen, a little girl with pigtails, maybe 6 years old, grinning at whoever was behind the camera. Claire knew that smile. It was the same one her daughter used to give her before everything fell apart. She could have easily slipped the expensive device into her apron and pretended she never saw it. Lord knows she needed the money. But standing there in the empty diner, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, Claire made a choice that would change both their lives forever. Where are you watching from tonight? The next morning, Claire stood outside Meridian Tower, the phone heavy in her weathered purse. The glass skyscraper stretched toward the clouds, its gleaming surface reflecting a world she'd never belonged to. Security guards in crisp uniforms eyed her faded uniform and scuffed shoes with barely concealed suspicion. She'd found the owner's information through the emergency contacts. James Mitchell, CEO, the same man whose face graced business magazines at the grocery store checkout. Claire had rehearsed what she'd say. Simple and quick. Return the phone. Refuse any reward. Get back to her real life. She couldn't afford to miss another shift at the diner, not with her landlord already breathing down her neck about late rent. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt endless, each ding marking floors she'd never see again. James Mitchell's assistant, a polished woman who probably spent more on her lunch than Claire made in a day, looked genuinely shocked when Claire explained why she was there. You found his phone, and you brought it back. The disbelief in her voice stung more than Claire expected. Like honesty was some kind of miracle in this world of marble floors and crystal chandeliers. When James appeared in the doorway of his office, Claire understood why his picture was everywhere. Tall, with graying temples that made him look distinguished rather than old, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her car. But his eyes, they weren't cold like she'd expected. They were tired, carrying the same weight she recognized in her own mirror each morning. You found my phone, he said, and his voice was softer than she'd imagined. I've been looking everywhere. My daughter calls me every night before bed. And last night, he trailed off, running a hand through his hair. How did you know where to find me? Claire pulled the device from her purse, its expensive case still pristine despite spending the night on her kitchen table. Your emergency contacts. I figured you'd want it back. She held it out, expecting him to take it and dismiss her with a polite thank you. Instead, he looked at her, really looked, like he was seeing something unexpected. Most people would have. He started, then shook his head. Thank you. Really? How can I repay you? You don't need to. Please, at least let me cover your cab fare, hey. Oh. He glanced toward his assistant. Maybe lunch? There's this place downstairs. Nothing fancy, but... Claire almost said no. She had a shift starting in 2 hours, bills that wouldn't pay themselves, and a world waiting that didn't include marble lobbies and men in $1,000 suits. But something about the way he'd mentioned his daughter, the genuine relief in his voice, made her pause. Maybe it was the loneliness she heard beneath his gratitude, or maybe she just needed to feel human again after months of invisibility. Just for a few minutes, she heard herself saying, "But then I really have to get back." As they walked toward the elevator, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that returning that phone had set something in motion. Something that went far beyond the device now safely in James Mitchell's pocket. The elevator doors closed, and for the first time in months, Claire wondered if maybe, just maybe, her luck was about to change. The restaurant downstairs hummed with the quiet efficiency of expensive dining, all cream-colored tablecloths and soft jazz. Claire felt out of place among the business suits and designer handbags, but James guided her to a corner booth with the kind of natural grace that came from a lifetime of belonging everywhere he went. He'd insisted on paying, waving away her protests with a gentle smile. "Tell me about yourself," he said over coffee that tasted like it cost more than her hourly wage. "What's your story, Claire?" She should have given him the polite, surface-level answer. "Nice to meet you. Thanks for lunch. Goodbye forever." Instead, she found herself talking about the diner, about working double shifts to make ends meet, about dreams that felt smaller and more distant every day. He listened with an attention that felt foreign after years of being invisible to everyone except when they needed their coffee refilled. "I used to have bigger plans," she admitted, stirring her coffee unnecessarily. "Nursing school, maybe. But life is a way of changing directions whether you want it to or not." James nodded, his expression thoughtful. "My daughter would love you," he said suddenly. "She's always telling me I work too much, that I don't notice real people anymore. She's 8, and somehow wiser than I am." His phone buzzed, and as he reached for it, his fingers fumbled. The device slipped, landing face up on the table. The screen lit up automatically, and Claire found herself staring at a video message. She started to look away. It wasn't her business, but the words floating across the bottom made her freeze. "Board meeting scheduled. Insider trading evidence uploaded. Mitchell's finished." Her blood turned cold. James was looking toward the waiter, completely unaware of what his phone was displaying. Claire's hands trembled as she recognized the voice narrating the video. Someone close to James, someone he trusted, planning his complete destruction. Financial documents flashed across the small screen, altered numbers, fabricated evidence that would destroy not just his company but his freedom. "James," she whispered, but he was still distracted. The video continued playing, revealing a carefully orchestrated plan to frame him for crimes he hadn't committed. Her throat felt dry as she understood the scope of what she was witnessing. This wasn't just corporate rivalry. This was personal. Someone wanted James Mitchell destroyed, and they had the power to do it. When he finally turned back, Claire had managed to close the video, but her face must have shown everything. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern replacing his earlier warmth. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Claire stayed at the phone between them, her mind racing. She could pretend she hadn't seen anything, walk away, go back to her life of invisible safety. But she kept thinking about that photo on his lock screen, the little girl with pigtails who called her daddy every night. She thought about trust and betrayal, about how someone's entire world could be shattered by lies. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. "I need to tell you something," Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper, "and you're not going to believe me." She looked directly into his confused eyes, knowing that whatever happened next would change everything. "Someone close to you is planning to destroy your life, and I just watched them explain exactly how they're going to do it." The color drained from James's face as the weight of her words settled between them like a stone dropped into still water. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. James's coffee cup sat forgotten, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the table. "What did you see?" His voice came out rough, smaller than before. Clay's heart hammered as she explained the video, watching his face crumble with each detail. The fabricated documents, the insider trading accusations, the timeline that would destroy his reputation and land him in prison. She watched a powerful man shrink before her eyes, becoming just another person whose world was falling apart. "Richard," he whispered, the name falling like a death sentence. "My business partner for 15 years. My daughter's godfather." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. He bounced her on his knee when she was little. "He was at my wife's funeral." Claire reached across the table instinctively, her waitress-worn hand covering his manicured one. "I'm so sorry. I know what betrayal feels like." And she did. Her ex-husband had emptied their savings account before disappearing, leaving her with nothing but debt and a daughter to raise alone. Different circumstances, same devastating realization that the person you trusted most was the one with the knife. James looked at their joined hands, and for a moment, Claire saw past the expensive suit to the frightened man underneath. "The board meeting is tomorrow," he said. "If Richard presents that evidence." He pulled his hand away, running it through his hair. "I won't just lose everything. I'll lose my daughter. She'll think her father is a criminal. We have to stop him," Claire heard herself say, then immediately felt foolish. "We? She was a diner waitress who couldn't even keep up with her rent. What could she possibly do against corporate conspiracy and manufactured evidence? But James looked at her with something like hope flickering in his eyes. The video. Is there proof it was fabricated? Timestamps. Anything we could use? Claire closed her eyes, trying to remember. There were file dates. Some of them looked wrong, somehow, like they'd been created last week, but were supposed to be from 2 years ago. She noticed because her ex had tried the same trick with their divorce papers, backdating documents to hide assets. That's it, James said, leaning forward. If we can prove the timestamps don't match, show the board that the evidence was manufactured. He paused, studying her face. Why are you helping me? You could walk away right now. Probably should walk away. The question hit deeper than Claire expected. She thought about her daughter, about the nights she'd worked extra shift just to afford school supplies, about all the times she'd needed help and found only closed doors. Because someone should, she said simply, and because your little girl deserves to keep believing her daddy is a good man. Tears gathered in James's eyes, and Claire felt her own throat tighten. Here was a man who probably hadn't been seen as human in years, reduced to stock prices and board decisions, and all it took was one person treating him with basic kindness to break through that armor. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments. Okay, he said, his voice steadier now. We need to get into my office tonight. Before the meeting, can you help me prove what you saw? Claire thought about her shift at the diner, about the safe anonymity of refilling coffee cups and staying invisible. Then she thought about trust and courage in 8-year-old girls who still believe their parents could protect them from the world. Yes, she said, let's save your life. The office building stood dark against the midnight sky, its windows reflecting the city lights like 1,000 watching eyes. Claire had never imagined she'd be sneaking into a corporate headquarters, her heart pounding as James led her through employee entrances and security codes. Her diner uniform felt surreal in this world of marble and mahogany, like she was playing a role in someone else's life. There, James whispered, pointing to his computer as they slipped into his office. Everything will be on Richard's shared drive, if we can access those fabricated files. His fingers flew across the keyboard, years of partnership giving him access Richard never expected him to use. Claire watched over his shoulder as folders opened, revealing the scope of the betrayal. Not just the evidence meant to frame James, but months of preparation, stolen client lists, diverted contracts, a systematic destruction that went far beyond simple business rivalry. He's been planning this for almost a year, she breathed, seeing timestamps that painted a picture of calculated malice. James said, his voice tight with controlled anger. The insider trading documents. Look at the metadata. He pulled up file properties that showed creation dates from last Tuesday, despite being labeled with dates from 2 years ago. And here, financial records that supposedly show my transactions. But the account numbers, they're not even mine. Claire felt a surge of satisfaction watching the evidence unfold. Her years of dealing with her ex-husband's lies had taught her to spot inconsistencies, and these were glaring once you knew what to look for. This is enough, right? The board will see his lying. Before James could answer, footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. They both froze as a voice called out, security making rounds. James quickly saved everything to a secure drive, his movements efficient despite the pressure. We need to go. Now. They slipped out through a service corridor, James's knowledge of the building keeping them ahead of the guards. It wasn't until they reached the street that Claire realized she was shaking, adrenaline and fear mixing into something that felt surprisingly like triumph. I can't believe we did that, she whispered, then looked at James's face in the streetlight. The fear was still there, but something else too. Determination. Hope. The meeting's in 6 hours. Are you ready? James nodded, then turned to her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Claire, I need you to know something. Win or lose tomorrow, you've given me more than evidence. You've reminded me what it feels like to have someone believe in me. He paused, vulnerability replacing his usual corporate confidence. I haven't felt that since my wife died. The rawness in his voice caught Claire off guard. She thought about loneliness and trust, about how rare it was to find someone willing to risk their safety for yours. "You would have done the same for me," she said, though they both knew that wasn't necessarily true. Their worlds didn't usually collide, much less intersect with such kindness. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. As they stood on the empty sidewalk, the city sleeping around them, Claire felt something shift inside her chest. For the first time in years, she'd done something that mattered. Something bigger than survival, bigger than just getting through another day. Tomorrow would bring the board meeting, the confrontation, the truth finally spoken aloud. But tonight, two unlikely allies had found each other across a divide that usually kept their worlds apart. And somehow, that felt like victory enough. The boardroom fell silent as James finished presenting the evidence. 12 faces around the polished table stared at the screen showing Richard's fabricated files, the metadata timestamps glowing like accusations under the fluorescent lights. Richard sat frozen at the far end of the table, his face gray as ash, the careful mask of 15 years finally slipping away. Claire watched from a hallway through a crack in the door, her heart hammering as she saw Jamesy's hand steady on the presentation remote. The man who'd been trembling over coffee yesterday now stood with quiet strength, letting the truth speak for itself. No anger, no accusations, just facts laid out like pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. "The evidence is fabricated," James said simply. "Every document Richard planned to present today was created last week and backdated. Our IT department can verify this independently." He clicked to the next slide, showing the real financial records, clean and legitimate. "The question isn't whether I'm guilty of insider trading. The question is why my business partner of 15 years tried to frame me for crimes he manufactured." The board members turned to stare at Richard, who seemed to age a decade in that moment. The careful plotting, the betrayal, the months of preparation, all of it crumbling under the weight of truth. We can discuss this privately," he stammered, but his voice carried no conviction. "No," said the board chairman, an elderly woman whose voice cut through excuses like steel. "I think we've heard enough. Security will escort you out. Richard, consider your partnership terminated immediately." Through the glass, Claire saw James's shoulders relax for the first time in 24 hours. The danger was over. His reputation, his company, his daughter's future, all safe because a waitress had been brave enough to speak up and a billionaire had been humble enough to listen. Later, in the quiet of his office, James poured 2 cups of coffee from the expensive machine in his corner. "Thank you," he said, handing Claire a cup. "I know those words aren't enough, but—" "They are," Claire interrupted softly. "They are exactly enough." She looked around the office, at the world that had briefly been hazed to navigate, and felt no envy. Just gratitude for the reminder that kindness could exist anywhere, between anyone. James reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. "I know you said no reward, but please. It's not charity, it's acknowledgement. You saved my life." Inside was a check that would cover her rent for a year. But more than that, it was signed with a note, "For nursing school, when you're ready." From a friend. 3 months later, Claire stood in her new scrubs, first day of classes behind her, and thought about trust and courage and the strange ways life could change direction. She still worked at the diner, but now it was by choice rather than desperation. The phone call from James's daughter had surprised her, an 8-year-old voice saying, "Daddy told me you saved him, so I wanted to say thank you too." Sometimes the smallest acts of honesty could reshape everything. Sometimes a lost phone became a found friendship. And sometimes, when you choose kindness over survival, the universe chooses kindness back. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey of unexpected friendship and the power of doing what's right, even when it's hard.